Rio Hondo Prep football is one of the best kept secrets in all of Southern California. As one of the smallest enrollments year in and year out, the Cares have won 14 CIF championships and have been one of the most successful programs throughout their history. Welcome to A Charge to Keep, the official podcast of Rio Hondo Prep football. And now, bringing you the latest news and content from his alma mater, a CIF champion in 2001. From the class of 2003, here's your host, Matt Ursima.
What is up, Rio Hondo Prep football fans? It is week 7 on the calendar of the 2022 season. And yes, there is no game this week, but we will have a show for you today as, we want to keep the ball rolling, if you will. We didn't have a game last week, unfortunately, due to the cancellation by Glendale High School, which was rather unfortunate, but the show goes on, right? And here we are in week 7. It is the bye week. The team has had a little time to recoup. They've been up there at a science camp. Some students out in Arizona, some up in Wrightwood. Just a good time away from the classroom, which I think is really, really good. And the time to put football on hold a little bit. I'm sure there's maybe some pass routes run up at camp or different things done, maybe some running. I don't know. But hopefully the Cares are enjoying their bye week here in week 7, as there are 3 games left to go. And something I spoke on last week with Rio being 5-0, we're going to correct that. We're going to say now they are 6-0. In fact, the late cancellation counting as a forfeit. So for those media outlets out there that still have the Cares listed at 5-0, we're calling it 6-0. Sorry, Glendale. You're lost. You are now 0-7. And whatever you end up doing this week, we'll see if that O stays on there. So unfortunate events last week that led to the cancellation of the homecoming game. There was, in fact, a homecoming ceremony that the young ladies were able to participate in, as well as the young men there at Care Park in Irwindale. Kind of odd. I saw the video. You see the no visiting stands behind them during the halftime ceremony or the homecoming ceremony, but it happened nonetheless. So congrats to the 5 young ladies who were crowned either homecoming princess or homecoming queen. The homecoming court lived on, and there were some nice cars there. The atmosphere looked pretty good, and hopefully it was it was a unique homecoming, to say the least. But we move on. It's the bye week, so I thought, how can we make this bye week really, really good? I wasn't going to have a show, quite honestly. There won't be a show Sunday. This is this week's show, much like last week. We just had the one show, and I had John Lee on there, the representative of the Oregon Alumni Force, the president of the force. I have proclaimed him. Fun interview there. If you haven't had a chance, please check that out on our previous episode. But today we are going to have one of the best all-around athletes in Rio Hondo Prep's history on the show. You know, I'm talking about none other than Jacob Blake, who was on not 1, not 2, but yes, 3 CIF championship teams for Rio Hondo Prep in the late 90s. A 3-peat, 96, 97, 98, kind of towards the end of the 8-man era, I should say. But Jacob Blake was just a force to be reckoned with. He was an outstanding tailback. He returned some punts as well, rushed for nearly 2,000 yards his senior year alone, a countless number of touchdowns, so many carries. We'll go over some of that in the interview I have with him. But for many of us RHP alumni, you can't say the name Jacob Blake without a smile coming to your face and be like, man, he was fun to watch. Every time he touched the ball, possible long distance touchdown. In basketball, the man could handle a rock, shoot it from anywhere, get to the rim, could get above the rim, if you know what I mean, occasionally. And in baseball, just a stud, man, a leadoff type of guy, hit nearly 500 his senior year and could run down everything in the outfield, and led the Cares in 1999 to the school's first ever baseball championship game appearance. To my knowledge, maybe there was something earlier before that, but the Cares did lose that day at Blair Field in Long Beach, California, against the ever-hated Grace Brethren Lancers. Unfortunately, they got our number that day, as well as plenty other numbers along the way. But Jacob Blake was a part of an incredible senior class. Seth Dinius, Jason Ramos, Sergio Villalobos, Dave Bartel, Who am I missing? I know I'm missing somebody. Sergio Perry Hampton, just an incredible group of guys that not only could play football, but baseball as well, and could hoop it a little bit too. We'll talk to Jacob about all the different sports, although we focus a lot on football here at the podcast. So I can't wait for you guys to hear that interview that I recorded with him last week. He is now a teacher up in Northern California, up in the Roseville area. He teaches, junior high. He taught elementary school a little bit and has found his niche at teaching in the junior high department. So again, we'll talk about that, a little bit of coaching he's doing. And I could say this about Jacob Blake. You know, he was an all-star, all everything, but you'd never know it from his personality. He was a guy that as an eighth grader, a seventh grader, I was when he was a junior and senior, looking up to him. He was larger than life. Man, there's Jacob Blake. And he would just smile and say hello to you and was just so kind to us junior high kids, as well as everyone else he came into contact with. Just a true class act. And I think, again, that's something that is rather unique at Rio Hondo Prep. The fact that the middle school and the high school interact with each other. You see each other in the hallways, and you know that in a few short years, you'll be the high school kid that junior high kids are looking up to. So Jacob Blake always nothing. He was never too big for the spotlight or anything of that nature, just a classy dude. And he's going to tell us a little bit about his teammates and classmates as well. Talk about Coach Johnson, Coach Drain, and etc. Can't wait for you guys to hear our conversation here on the Charge to Keep podcast. He's been loving listening to the show as well, as he's able to keep track of Rio Hondo. And I'll tell you this, you cannot write the Rio Hondo record books without Jacob Blake's name, because he's all over the record books. I had handy, whether it's rushing yards, rushing attempts, touchdowns, total points, punt return yards. I mean, the dude was just a stud. And he'll tell you on the podcast here, as you guys will hear, you know, he wasn't really that into football, which is scary to think about. He didn't like all the contact and stuff, so he tried to run fast away from everyone. But some great memories. Talks about Care Youth League a little bit. You guys will be surprised, I think, to hear a story there, here or there, but I won't spoil it all for you guys. I do want you guys to enjoy. But I did want to say, as this is technically during the week, the pregame show, if you will, there is no pregame, but what I wanted to do is to look ahead at the Gold Coast League standings. I mentioned some of the games last week. These last 3 games are very important for Rio Hondo Prep. They got to win, you'd think, 2 out of 3 to really guarantee themselves in the playoffs. In the Gold Coast League, there's only 4 teams, but you do get 2 teams out of those 4 into the playoffs. So Rio's got to be first or second here out of Brentwood, Campbell Hall, and Viewpoint. And those are their 3 opponents coming up here the next 3 weeks after this 2-week bye that they've had in theory to rest up and such. So let's go with them in order. Remember, next week for week 8 in Rio's 7th game, they will be playing Viewpoint at home, as that game was moved to Care Park because of Viewpoint not being able to secure a field. So that game will be played on October 13th at Care Park in Irwindale, a home game. And it feels like we haven't seen Rio in a long time. By the time this game gets played, it'll be 3 weeks since we saw them playing at Savannah down there in Orange County on a Thursday night a couple of weeks ago. So, October 13th, Rio hosts Viewpoint at home. Then they will host the following week Brentwood on October 21st in week 9, and finish up the season at Campbell Hall on October 28th, the Friday before Halloween. So let's look real quick right now in order, just an update in the standings, if you will. By the time you guys hear this Friday or such, most teams here will have played 6 or even 7 games. So Viewpoint, who is on the schedule next week, and looking at their schedule, they are 1-5, definitely the bottom of the Gold Coast League, even though we haven't played official games in that capacity yet. But their only win was, a common opponent here, we can say, was El Monte. They did lose to El Monte 26-14 a few weeks back. And Viewpoint's only win of the season was against Artesia in an 18-14 ball game a couple of weeks ago. Or was that September 30th? Yeah, that would have been last week. So they finally got off of the losing streak, opened the season with 5 straight losses over by losses to Mary Star of the Sea, 35-7. East Side from Lancaster, 35-14. Silmar 34-0. Los Alamigos 28-14, losing to El-Mani 28-6-14, and getting their first win last week against who was this? I'm sorry, Artesia. So that's a little recap from last week. This week, Viewpoint will play Campbell Hall at Campbell Hall. It's Saturday at 6 o'clock. So if you're looking for something to do, Saturday at 6 o'clock, Viewpoint will play against the host and undefeated 7-0 Campbell Hall. But first, I want to get to Rio's second opponent in these final three games, and that is none other than Brentwood, who is, let me see, they've played 7 games as well. I believe they are 5-2 on the season. Yes, there it is. Brentwood, Brentwood 5-2 on the season, as I mentioned. And I know there's been some common opponents there.
Start your season of savings now with Target.
Max Preps, man, will get you every time. Got to be careful. So here we go. 5-2 Brentwood. They beat LaSalle 41-0 to start the season. They beat Salesian, 33-14 in week 2. Oak Park, they lost 37-0. They did beat Burbank 48-6. They beat Carpinteria 41-0, and they beat Palisades 28-21. So we'll see what Brentwood can do this week. They did lose to Chaffee last week. I told you that would be a tough game for the Brentwood Eagles, and it was. In fact, they lost 38-35, giving up quite a few points there to Chaffee High School from Ontario. So most of their games, they've played good defense. They've allowed 0, 14, 0, 6, 0, 21, and then 38. So after starting off pretty strong defensively, it appears that Brentwood has lost the defensive side of the ball there a little bit, at least for the time being. Okay, now to the 7-0 Campbell Hall Vikings. Let's look at their schedule. Some big wins throughout this season. They opened the season 36-13 winners over Sun Valley Poly. They beat Arleta 42-7. They beat La Sierra from Riverside 38-6. They beat Pasadena Poly 32-6 at Pasadena Poly. They beat Francis Parker from San Diego 19-13. St. Genevieve from Panorama City 23-6. And last week, kind of an odd score here, they beat St. Anthony of Long Beach 7-0. So rather interesting scores there for Campbell Hall. But the bottom line is they are 7-0, and they are definitely the team to beat here in moving forward for
the fact that this Reese's ad showed up at this exact moment proves that
ads going on.
Your devices are listening.
Guys. You guys can probably hear that annoying sound. Stop it. Anyway, away we go. I wish I could turn this off somehow. Turn the ads off. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I forgot to mention Brentwood, this upcoming opponent for this week, since it will not be a league game. It looks like they are playing. No, they are off this week. So Brentwood's bye comes now. Campbell Hall's bye comes right before the game against Rio Hondo in week 9. Their bye, that is, and then Rio Hondo, of course, playing them in week 10. So exciting things here on the podcast. Excited for Rio football. It's kind of odd this week not being able to go to a game. Last week I went to a random high school game because I knew the crew that was working the game, and enjoyed a game against Claremont and South Hills. And I could tell you right now, honestly, I do believe Rio Hondo, this current team, could compete with both of those schools for whatever that's worth. Decent teams, decently coached, pretty good number. Well, actually, the numbers were surprising to see the lack of participation there, but I think Rio can compete with those schools, as I think they can compete with a lot of schools. And so I just wanted to lay that out there and give you guys a little Gold Coast League preview of the schools that we're going to be facing here the next few weeks. But now let's bring on Jacob Blake, one of the best athletes in Rio Hondo's history. Sorry about all those ads and stuff, guys, on Max Preps. Should have muted it and such, but hey, we make mistakes. We recover and we move forward. You guys are going to love this interview. Jacob Blake, it was the man, is the man. And I know a lot of people who've wanted to hear from Jacob are going to be pretty fired up about this. So let's bring him on now from the class of 1999. Number 1, Jacob Blake. All right. I am now joined by one of the best athletes in Rio Hondo Prep's history from the class of 1999. Number 1, Jacob Blake. What's up, man?
What's going on? Good to be here. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Now, Jacob, you got to tell me, man, first of all, I mean, I've had a lot of requests to have you on. You still rocking the #1 jersey here? For you not watching on YouTube, my man's got his jersey on from high school in his junior high classroom where he's a teacher. Do you just wear this on a daily basis or what?
You know what? Sometimes on Throwback Thursdays, I gotta represent. But to be honest with you, it was actually on the wall in the garage, and I had to shake a few spiders out of it, had to dust it off, and break it out for this special occasion.
Well, I remember firsthand seeing that #1, the first guy out of the locker room, walking alongside the pavilion, taking that walk to the field, all those big guys behind you. And I was just like, #1, Jacob Blake, first one out as you go in numerical order. I was like, no one's beating these guys tonight. Those are my memories of seeing that jersey.
Yeah, I absolutely loved, just the team and everything. But yeah, I was the second one to wear one. I was actually after Jason Laser Lett. So, I was just following in the great footsteps of, past running backs. So
was Jay Lett a Cardinal also?
You know it. He was a Cardinal, and it's funny because he was 2 years older than me. When I was a freshman, sophomore, he used to actually give me rides to school, to and from school. And yeah, he was a cool cat. I really enjoyed getting to know him, and yeah, I modeled a lot of my my running style after him. So
definitely, man. Well, yeah, Jason Lett, then Jacob Blake, and then Jonathan Echeverria wore #1 after you. So 3 great Cardinal running backs there in Cary Youth League, carrying on the tradition of the #1 jersey at Rio.
Absolutely, and I'm sorry, Jonathan, if you're listening. Sorry I had to beat you in that silent auction, but it was well worth the $60. I'm glad I got it. So.
Oh yeah, the jersey's priceless. That is awesome, Jacob. Man, I got so much to talk to you about. I don't know where to start. Let's start there in Cary Youth League, Jacob. Being on the Cardinals, they've changed the team name since then, but I know you're a proud Cardinal. When did you start Cary Youth League? What was your experience like then with your coaches and teammates?
I'm glad you asked this question because actually I didn't start as a Cardinal. I started actually as a D, so a 5-year-old in Covina as a Tiger. So I played for the Tigers for the first 2 years under Coach Jim Davis, and had an amazing experience. But me and my family, we moved around a lot when I was younger. So I ended up moving to West Covina. I think I lived with my aunt for a little bit, with my mom's sister. And when we were in West Covina, we actually took a little bit of a break. And my mom went back to college and finished when I was in the 3rd grade. And believe it or not, she actually had a college class with Scott Weidman on the Cardinals. And he was trying to get me to come on back. And I made it back when I was in 5th grade. And I played for Phil Horton as a AAA. I played for Coach Mike Murphy in middle school. And just had an absolutely amazing time. Like Cary Youth League days, you're playing with your friends from school. You play with them year round. And, kids around here and in Roseville and the Sacramento area, they specialize a lot at a young age. So they don't get that team experience, that year-round team experience, which is amazing. So I absolutely loved it. And then, yeah, when I was in 7th grade, getting ready to go into 8th grade, I was at one of the summer camps. And I think it was one of those camps where we ride our bikes all the way back from, it might've been that year, but I remember Joe Parker, who was the 8th grade coach at Rio, convinced me to come over and give Rio Hondo a try for 8th grade, and the rest is history. And I can't thank him enough, and can't thank those previous coaches enough for sticking with me.
I am calling for an immediate investigation into the recruiting violations of Scott Weidman. I knew that. Weidman and Horton, the very competitive, the Cardinals, and then swooping you from the transferring portal from the we had a transfer portal in Cary Youth League back in the day. This is outrageous. This is absolutely outrageous. You go from the Tiger to the Cardinals, Jacob. What is going on?
Hey, we're 30 years past that now. So 35. Oh goodness. 35 years past that. So I don't know if they're going to strip us from our plaques or trophies or anything, but I had a great time. Had a great time on both teams, and yeah, I just absolutely loved starting my my athletic career in Cary Youth League.
Oh, that's so cool to hear, man. Yeah, and then it's kind of that small town feel where you play with your friends through the different ages and still get to play, in high school. And you had some amazing teammates, which we'll get to in a second. But first off, Jacob, you're up in Northern California. Tell us a little bit about where you're at and what you're doing now.
Excellent. So I'm in Roseville. It's about 20 minutes east of Sacramento. We're like right the midpoint between San Francisco and Lake Tahoe. So it's a really cool place to be. I have been up here for 16 years now, and been a teacher teaching middle school for 14 of those years. I taught fourth grade for a couple of years, but we won't talk about that. I had to come back to middle school. But yeah, I've been a math and science teacher for 10 years. And then recently I've been a STEM teacher. So teaching design, 3D design, 3D printing, robotics, coding, and yeah, it's amazing. So I'm the head of the, we call it the Project Lead the Way program. That's our STEM provider. And I absolutely love it. I teach it all day. So it's not like just, a one-off kind of elective. And I teach other core classes. I teach 5 engineering and design classes, and it's amazing. I love it.
Wow, it's good to hear you're doing what you love. Now, all this school talk, you got any sports stuff, any coaching in there, whether it's your kids or there at the school or anything?
Absolutely. So when my son was born, I was like, I'm going to take a break from coaching. I coached for 5 years at the previous middle school I was at. I actually coached 5 years of girls basketball, which was awesome. And then when my son was born, I took a break from coaching. And now he's 10 years old. And I think I came back and coached a little bit when he was like 7, when he was doing non-competitive basketball. And then the pandemic happened, and then he didn't do anything for a couple of years. And then recently he's starting to play AAU basketball, which is a lot of fun, super competitive and like intense. So it's good for him. But I've decided I don't want to coach him anymore.
Okay.
He's kind of that age where it's like, it's causing a little bit of friction at home. So I'm recently, just 2 weeks ago, I started a basketball club here at the school for 6th graders, because they don't get to compete against other schools until 7th and 8th grade. So nice. I started the 6th grade basketball club. I got like 25 kids, and we're just working on skills and development. And yeah, it's a blast.
Takes you back to your high school days when you're coaching there at Wingate Park, right?
Yes, sir. So much fun. So much fun. And so another recruiting violation. I think it was end of high school, early college when I was in RHLA. Atlantic pulled me in. So I was coaching Atlantic, I think, when it was like my senior year. I was coaching as an assistant coach with Mr. John Lee. So big ups to Mr. Lee, because he was an amazing coach and like really just kind of taught me the ropes, let me lead club meetings, and it was a great experience. Like definitely one thing that led me to become a teacher, and kind of fostered that love of working with young people. So
Jacob, West guys go to the East. East guys don't go to the West. What are you doing to me, man? I can tolerate the Cardinals kind of, but Atlantic, you're killing me.
I know, those Pirates, man. They like to steal.
Oh, they're savages. Oh man. Jacob, I know you're a huge basketball guy. You arguably were one of the best athletes we've had to go through the school. This is a football podcast, but you mentioned basketball a little bit there. Just before we get into football, your love of basketball, and then also baseball, because in 1999, you guys reached the CIF finals. Unfortunately, you got hurt in that game, but what a heck of a year that was. Talk to me about basketball and baseball.
So basketball was always, the first love. And to be honest with you, like football, I loved my teammates. I loved the sport, but I was never one of those like super aggressive guys. I wasn't like the Jason Ramos or the Seth Phineas or the Dave Ramos or the Ed Maldonado, those guys that were just looking for contact. I was successful because I tried to avoid contact at all costs. And most of the time, to be honest with you, I didn't, need to get like contact, because I had amazing like offensive line, amazing blockers. So anyways, with basketball, it was always like, we're deep in the playoffs. And then it was like, okay, you got to start basketball immediately. So it was always a little frustrating, because it was like, all right, you got the web tournament, or maybe we even missed the web tournament. That was kind of like an early tournament in the season to kind of get us going. But with basketball, it's just always one of those sports where you didn't need like a full team to practice and to play. I would always go to Edgewood Middle School, shoot hoops, play pickup ball at Dalton Park in Glendora.
Yes.
It was one of those things that you could just do without like a huge group of people, and it really tests you, because you're either going one-on-one or, really having to show what you're made of. So that's where my love of basketball came from. And then, growing up in the early 90s where it was like the best time of basketball. So you got like Jordan and you got Shaq. My favorite was Penny Hardaway. So another reason for the number one.
Nice.
But yeah, basketball was my first love for sure.
So I was in junior high when you guys, were in high school, and that 99 year I was in 8th grade, and just so excited seeing you guys so successful. Obviously having the three-peat in football, and then basketball games, baseball games. I remember in basketball, man, there was a couple games from you. One game, I think you dribbled between a guy's legs down there in front of the pit. And then another game, might have been Flint Ridge. You hit a buzzer beater. I don't know if you remember these games.
Flint Ridge, I remember that one.
Yeah, and us in the pit down there, we were losing our mind. I mean, that was just
it was right in front of the pit. Yeah,
that's right. Remember that? You went kind of baseline. Anyway, bank shot, I think, at the buzzer. That was sick, man.
That's my favorite basketball memory for sure. I remember they set a pick up top around the right side because I didn't have much of a left, but around the right side, and then finished at the rim and one at the buzzer. And just so much fun. Funny story, I just showed my family the VHS of it. I had to find a VHS player because I didn't have one. So I hunted down a VHS player, found it, and I showed it to my son, and he was kind of excited about it because he's playing basketball now. But my wife just sitting there, just totally not impressed. I had to show her a couple more times. I'm like, really, you don't understand? This was like, one of our rivals, and she's just like, whatever.
Hey, it gets better. The legend gets bigger every year. Yeah, we were in the band in that little student area. That was just the best. Like, I was like so excited for high school watching you guys play basketball. And yeah, I think you dunked in a playoff game. Maybe that was up at Baker or something. But
you have the best memory because that was it. That was my one in-game dunk. And shout out to Sergio Villalobos for the assist because he never let me live it down. I was like bragging about the dunk. He's like, you never would have had that dunk unless I gave you the outlet. So yeah, little dunk, my one dunk.
That's right. Up in Baker, way out towards Vegas, middle of nowhere. Actually refereed a playoff basketball game out there a few years back too. I was like, I remember when Rio came out here. So and then real quick, Jacob, baseball, baseball's kind of the forgotten sport at Rio, but that year, we've heard Steve Almond talk about it here on the podcast. That was a special year. You were a leadoff hitter. Left fielder, could run down everything. After the greatness in football and basketball, you still found time to care and compete really in the great game of baseball too. Going all the way to the finals at your future alma mater at Long Beach State, right? And then losing them.
And that was a heartbreaker, but that season was special. It was so much fun because I remember Coach Horton and Coach Loomis were just really adamant about like, hey, we're taking this serious. And I remember Jason Ramos, he had to remind me of this because, one of my best friends, we still see each other at least 2 or 3 times a year. But he reminded us of like the fact that Coach Loomis and Coach Horton were just like, hey, if you guys want to be serious about this, I know that you guys could do it. And they believed in us. I also remember we wore our previous year's game jerseys as our practice jerseys. So it was like more official. We got new uniforms that year and we were just fired up. We had amazing pitching. I just remember like Sergio and Perry. Steve Almond, I think, was a pitcher as well. We had Matt Hetty as catcher. I think Ramos caught as well. And it was just
Ryan Prest, sophomore.
Oh my gosh, Ryan Prest. Very much underrated. He just an amazing athlete. And I think he was getting some in-game dunks too in basketball.
Yeah, we got to have him on soon. But yeah, special. I mean, you pull a hamstring or something like in the first inning?
First play of the game, I beat out a grounder to first, and I was dealing with hamstring issues from 2 games previous, and it got pulled, and then just stretched out the rest of the game, and then I came in, made an error in left field, and then my last at bat, strikeout. Strikeout looking, not even swinging. So, it's funny just having this conversation. I remember some of those things. And I remember because baseball, it wasn't my favorite sport. It wasn't like something I looked forward to. But once we got into the season, it was so much fun. But that season, I remember I had 41 at bat. So that was my 41st at bat. And then I had 20 hits. So I was like so close to like batting 500 by like one at bat. So
just an example of the type of team you guys had that year. Great pitching, leading off. A guy hitting 500 leading off is pretty awesome. A special time, man. And it kind of propelled all of us to like baseball a little bit more. But what I have before me here, Jacob, this is hot off the presses. These are Rio Hondo football record books. And
okay.
the name Jacob Blake is all over these things. I gotta give a few numbers here. First of all, you are number 5 on the all-time career rushing yards, 2,807 rushing yards. You're behind Landon Goodwill, yep, Nate Tycho, Jonathan Guerrero, and Rick Johnson. So almost 3,000 yards, man, in 3 years of playing tailback.
Hey, that's a surprise to me. I see some of these running backs now, and I'm like, whoa, these guys are like true running backs. Like, they don't mind the contact. They're fast. They know how to. Oh, it's incredible. I'm surprised I'm still in that conversation. So that's a surprise. So
well, you ran for your life, but with, you were very good at it. And so I just remember we thought you were, man, you were such a stud. You are second in career points behind Rick Johnson, who has 491, but he had 4 years of varsity football. You had 3. You had 476 career points.
Hey, that's not bad. All right. And
yeah.
I got to remind you, I'm sorry, I don't want to be that guy, but my sophomore year, I only came up for the playoffs.
Okay. So you just look at you only in two and a half years of carries there. So yeah, Rick, that's awesome. I thought you were on here. Oh, here we go. No, that's career punt yards. So you have a few single season. So our great guy, Will Tarico, does a great job with all this stuff. He broke it all down: career records, season records, and single game records. So he's really gone back into the archives here. There was a single season. Here we go. 1998, your senior year, Jacob, behind Landon Goodwill, of course, his senior year. You had 1,948 rushing yards alone in your senior year. So just a couple hundred behind Landon Goodwill.
Yeah, and I remember 1948 because I was like, oh, I wanted to get to 2,000. I don't know, just as a mark. And it wasn't even like I was hunting for stats, but I was like, oh, how cool would it have been to like have 2,000 rushing yards? Not just for me, but just for like, all the offensive line, all the blockers and stuff. Because, you could have put a lot of different guys in my spot, and they were just opening up holes, and all I had to do was sprint through like Forrest Gump. So
that upright style, I do remember that.
Straight up and down.
See, you were 200 yards behind Landon, but Landon did it. He set the record rushing attempts, 264 rushing attempts. You're on the list a little down here, 140 rushing attempts. So you did your damage in 120 less carries than Landon, which says something.
Yeah, but we're talking 8-man football. I had less guys chasing me down as well. So.
True. And finally,
it was a perfect sport for me.
and as far as a single season record goes, you are number 1 in yards per attempt, yards per carry. Jonathan Guerrero, I think, has the career yards per carry now, but you are number 1, 1998, 13.9 yards a carry. And right behind you, your good buddy, Jason Lett, 13.7.
Yeah, Jay Lett. All right. Yeah. Cardinals, let's go.
What do you think, man? Memory lane, are these sparking some good moments and thoughts for you?
Absolutely. This is so much fun. And who was it that you said is putting these stats together? You said Tarico?
Will Tarico, yeah.
Yeah, big ups to Will for doing that. So thank you for keeping track. It's just always fun, and it takes you down memory lane, and just kind of we're talking 24 years ago, 23 years ago now. So now that I'm old, it's kind of like, hey.
They can't have 2,000 yards. I could just, no, you didn't. You had 19. Hey, close enough. Not 2,000 yards. Let's say. Hey, I do have a really good memory. And one thing we're doing on the podcast is we're honoring the history of the program while, trying to promote the present, right, and the future and all that. There was a run. It wasn't a touchdown. I don't even think it was a first down, but one of my favorite runs, memories of you, was, I think it was your senior year. And there was 2 8-man divisions. There was a small school and a large school. You guys, I think, were small school still at the time, so maybe it was a different year. But you went to Riverside Christian, who was the large school defending champ, and they were ranked number 1. We were ranked number 2, and we went in there. It was one of the first plays of the game, and we blew them out of the water. It was one of the first plays of the game. They had you in the backfield. You broke a couple of tackles. You turned like a 5-yard loss into like a 3-yard gain, and you even put your shoulder down a little bit, and the context you said you avoided, you didn't in this case. And it was like, oh man, Jacob Blake's ready to play today. And the rest is history. I think Jason Ramos had like 15 or 20 tackles. I mean, I remember that short yardage run. It still sticks out to me from all the big ones you had in your career.
Well, thank you for mentioning that, because I don't remember too many of those, but I just remember just wanting to just play hard for my teammates and, you know, for our coaches that poured so much energy into us, and for the, like you said, the tradition, because, you know, you come in and like Rio has this tradition, and when you're in it, you just want to honor it and try your best. So.
Well, Jacob, you've listened to the podcast a little bit. You're telling me, and you know, as far as Rio Hondo football goes, I'm really trying to promote this brand and to unite the alumni, no matter where they're at. I mean, what was your Rio Hondo Prep experience like on the gridiron? You played, you know, 3 years you were part of 3 straight championship teams. It's just a really special time there in the late 90s. If you could sum up just your Rio Hondo football experience and why it continues to be special to you.
So I'd say it's special just because, you know, sometimes the scores didn't show it, but for me personally, it's difficult. I was like outside of my comfort zone, just playing football in general. And I just remember just everything going into it, the double sessions. Every other year we were on a trip. So before my junior year, we were in Europe for 5 weeks. Before my freshman year, we had the big 8-week trip, the cross-country trip. We went across the south to Florida. I remember playing football in the Florida Keys in about, I don't know, like 1.5 feet of water.
Wow.
Incoming freshmen, you know, so there's Ed Maldonado, Dave Ramos, and they just throw you in there with them. I just remember it being difficult, but just being like an adventure. So Rio Hondo football to me was that adventure, and it made me feel tough and made me feel part of something bigger than me, you know, by myself. And yeah, when I look back at my football experience, like I think of everything that led up to it, you know, all those coaches that we mentioned in KYL, reminds me of like, even like all the RHLA guys. Like I took some notes, like RHLA guys, like were a big part of like encouraging us, you know, whether it was them dropping by practice or, you know, them coaching along with us, like as we as assistant coaches. You just felt like you were part of this like bigger thing, this bigger family. And yeah, some of the RHLA guys just stand out. The Lee brothers, so like Bill, John, and Ken, Pete Clark, Jeff Fairley, Rick and Randy Johnson, the Carson brothers, you know, Dave, Mark, and Todd. Like, I feel like they were just all like our uncles that were just all just there. And, you know, after the game, like a slap on the shoulder pat or on the helmet, and, you know, words of encouragement, or like, you know, giving us words of advice. And yeah, it was just like you were part of something bigger than you. And yeah, you just want to honor the past, and not just honor the past, but like also, you know, I wore this as a reminder too. Like after the game, we were like, you know, shooting or throwing our gloves out to the little kids that were watching, or our boys that came. So it was, you know, making sure that we honor the past, try hardest in the present, and then, you know, make sure that we're sparking the next generation, the future. So.
Yeah, honoring tradition and building the future, I think, is a good way to look at it. And yeah, those wristbands, that was a big deal. I remember I caught Jay Lett's wristband one of the first games. He threw it up in the stands, and then the kids start swarming now. Just good memories. And it's just a cycle. Those kids become the players later on, you know, and it's just like, oh, I remember when I was that little kid, and now I get to give them my wristbands. It's just one, you know, cycle of life, if you will. I want to ask you, Jacob, about your coaches and teammates. You played for two iconic guys in football, coaches who are no longer with us. Talk to me about Randall Johnson and Gary Lunny. I mean, two different personalities, but two guys that were so meaningful to RHP football over the years.
Absolutely. So Coach Randall Johnson, I was terrified of him. I didn't want to disappoint him in any kind of a way. And I just remember just being like, this is a legend, like I'm playing for a legendary coach. Like he was legendary then, you know? So I just always remember wanting to do my absolute best and, you know, be prepared, not only like for the games, but for practices as well. And a funny story about Coach Johnson, my senior year, I got honored with San Gabriel Valley All-Star team. I didn't get to play in the game, but I was put on the list as like an honorable mention. You know, small school, that's, you know, that's how they usually roll with us. And I remember Coach Johnson coming after the fact, and, you know, he gave me my plaque or whatever, and he was like, just so you know, my son Rick, he got this for football, for basketball, and for baseball. I was like, oh shoot. So, you know, he would give you your props a little bit, but then at the same time, he, you know, didn't let you get big headed and start scratching out here. So that was one of my memories of Coach Johnson, and just always having us like super prepared. And then Coach Lunny, Coach Gary Lunny, I remember he was offensive line. I remember he was like in charge of all of the blocking schemes and stuff. And I remember like my job was pretty simple. Like, all right, get on Jay Ramos's hip. And then as soon as he hits the guy, explode, and boom, you're gone, right? And that was kind of the routine. Or get on Steve Amon's hip and then boom, you're gone. But the blocking schemes that he would set up, and I just remember some of them talking about it. So like Josh Dane, one of my best friends, he was a year up, class of 98. And he would talk about like all the blocking schemes, and he's currently a coach now up in Northern California. But I remember them being like, all right, you got to get to the linebacker, or you got to pull. And I just remember thinking like how much more complicated that was for the linemen than it was for me, and how much more prepared they needed to be. So Gary Lunny and his coaching. And one of the memories of him, I remember my senior year, our homecoming game, we lost. It was Bethel Christian Lancaster. And they just, you know, they came out, punched us in the mouth. I think I had like 2 fumbles. It just wasn't one of those typical games. And I was just like super timid. And I remember Gary Lunny coming over to, or Coach Lunny coming over to me and just being like, come on, Blake, come on. I know you can break one. I know you can break one. And ended up not being able to do it that game. But I just remember him just always being encouraging. And it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't like too crazy or yelly. And yeah, both great guys.
Always with a sense of humor, and then yeah, leading that defense like he did for so many years, defensive coordinator. Hey, I remember you back at safety. He probably was just like, if this doesn't work up here, I'm sure Blake will get him, right?
Yeah. Like just chase him down, but Ramos will probably get him 95% of the time.
Oh man, great stuff. I don't want to leave out a coach before we get to teammates. You know, Coach Drain was you know, with you guys through it all, basketball coach. He had a 70th birthday not too long ago and has recently retired from coaching at Rio. Led RHP football after Coach Johnson for many years. Talk to me about Coach Ken Drain, just the impact he had on your life.
Just a huge impact. So basketball was my favorite sport, and Coach Drain, I know, was just so passionate about it. You know, he was one of those guys that like just gave it to you straight. You know, he didn't sugarcoat anything. It was always like, you know, it was one of those coaches that like is just like straight and to the point, and, you know, just kind of rough. He was a tough coach and had high expectations for us. So I think that was, it was always, you know, just kind of like Coach Randall Johnson. You know, you're intimidated. He's legendary. He's done amazing things. He used to talk about the 1990 team. I think that was the one that had like Todd Carson. It was the guys that went to state. I think they were CIF runners up.
Yeah.
Right? And then they went to state. So I just remember not only him being an amazing like X's and O's basketball coach, but I just remember a lot of the club meetings and, you know, his mentorship, just leading us as, you know, young men And I think that's probably the biggest thing I'll take away, rather than just whatever happened on the basketball court. And I just also remember too, like a couple of times it would be like after a game, and I remember I would want to earn some money, and I would go to, I think he had a janitorial business at the time. Yeah. I remember going and like cleaning up an office building with him. And I remember after some of the games, when we had Hampton Hall, when it was finished, I remember him like cleaning up Hampton Hall afterwards. So he set like such a great example for me now as an adult. So now I'm like, why am I going to hire a gardener or a pool guy or whatever? Like, I'm going to do that myself, you know, as long as I'm able to, like, after a long week's work or whatever. Like, that's my morning work on Saturdays.
Yeah, there you go, man. It's funny how things come again full circle in so many ways. Yeah. And you know, Jacob, your senior class was amazing. You can talk about any teammates you want, but that senior class in '99, Sergio Villalobos, Perry Hampton, Seth Dinius, Jason Ramos. I'm sure I'll forget some names in there. Talk to me about your senior class and just your teammates in general over the years. Any memories or thoughts that come to mind?
So the big thoughts are just like, it's almost like the times off the court, because that's when we were like truly bonded. We had 6 senior guys, or we had a graduating class of 12, 6 boys, 6 girls. So 6 senior guys. And you mentioned, I think 5 of us. So it was Perry, Sergio, me, Ramos, Seth, and then David Bartell.
And that's right.
Just like the 6 of us were like, you know, I wouldn't say like inseparable, but I'd say like we had a great time together. And to be honest with you, I became better friends with them after we graduated high school. I joined a basketball league at Victory Park with Jay Ramos and Seth. We did that, I think, my freshman year of college, maybe sophomore year. Harry and Sergio and Jay Ramos, they came to my destination wedding in Hawaii in 2011. So we've kept in touch.
Nice.
And I need to give a shout out to Sergio and Perry, because it's been a minute. We need to get back in touch. But I saw Ramos just this last Labor Day for my birthday. So just those bonds that were created and all that time spent together, the science camps, the coaching against each other, just everything, classes, high school, like, you know, bonded us together. But yeah, that senior year was so much fun. Just being able to compete in all sports, go into the playoffs, and yeah, just so many great memories of that.
Help me out here. This is one of the nicest guys I've ever met in person, but you put a football helmet on him, and he was the scariest individual I've ever seen, especially pound for pound. How scary was Jason Ramos on a football field?
So he was terrifying. I used to hate practicing against him, but I think that he probably like made me faster because of that. But when I was kind of in the AAA and then junior high divisions in KYL, Ramos always played up, even though we were kind of like the same age, because he was a big guy, especially for his age back then. And so I never got to actually play football against Ramos until it was practice. And it was like 8th grade football practice. And I was like, holy smokes, what's wrong with this guy? Like, why is he so like intense? Like, we're on the same team. If you injure me, Coach Parker is going to be really, really upset. But seriously, one of my best friends now to this day. And once again, like in high school, like I feel like we pushed each other. We weren't like really good friends. It was more competitive then. But right after high school, like our friendship grew, and like I consider him one of my best friends to this day. I call him Brother Ramos. So terrifying on the football field. As a human, like one of the most supportive friends I've ever had in my life. So
oh man, that's great to hear. And that's the thing I just encourage these guys now who are teammates, like these are going to be friendships you take with you forever. And every single one of us everyone I've taught, all of us wish we could go back and to do it again. But you know, you have the memories, and that's what we just have to take with us for now. You talked about teammates, coaches. What about other athletes? You said you were watching, you know, Michael Jordan and Penny Hardaway. Was there any football players you kind of looked at and were like, oh, I want to be like that guy?
So my favorite football player was Emmitt Smith. As far as like NFL players go, growing up. So it was Emmitt Smith. So the Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith combo in Dallas in the 90s. But other than that, like honestly didn't like watch too much football. Like as far as like football goes, like more so watching like the older players at Rio. So like I said before, Jay Lett, Josh Krieger.
Oh yeah.
Josh Krieger, right? Like
Yeah.
I remember, and back to Coach Johnson, I remember we're doing running back practice, and I remember I was just learning the holes and stuff, and I was like, all I need to know is power 31. That's all I need to know. But he's teaching us the holes and stuff, and one of the examples he gave, he's like one of the best running backs in RHP history, and Coach Johnson said, Josh Krieger, just the way he ran and how shifty he was, how he followed blockers, and how he was able to work himself out of different situations. Big shout out to him. And then Ed Maldonado. So I didn't play my freshman year at all. I was on the JV team because Ed Maldonado ran me over. We were doing goal line defense, and they're like, all right, Blake, right here, goal line linebacker. Ed Maldonado ran me over, and I broke my ankle. So I didn't get to play freshman year at all. So Ed Maldonado was one of those tough runners. And obviously I didn't model my game after him, but he was a lot of fun to watch. And then I was trying to think of who else. And then just the legend of Jeff Fairley.
Oh yeah.
Jeff Fairley and Rick Johnson. So Jeff Fairley, I don't know if you knew this, he didn't give it to me, but someone gave me his face mask before I want to say it was my junior year. And I remember thinking like, really, is this Fairley's face mask? Why doesn't he have it, you know?
Yeah.
And if you look at pictures, like that's Fairley's face mask. And I think it was either one of the Lee brothers or someone that gave it to me and was like, here, wear it with pride. And
yeah,
I always felt like it gave me special powers. So
I think it did, man. You had a cape behind you as you were running. That is outstanding. Jacob, what about, you're a busy guy teaching and got your own kids running around and everything, you're coaching, but do you still find time? I know you listen to the podcast and listening to friends. Are you able to follow, I don't know, at least scores or whatever of the Rio teams currently or from the past?
So this is kind of the first year, and your podcast is like the kind of catalyst to kind of get me back involved. As you know, the last few years have been just really difficult. So kind of coming out of that now and like really excited about, following sports a little bit more. And your podcast has been like the catalyst for me to kind of get back into it. So I followed the start of the season, so I see that they're 5-0, and probably the closest game I think is like maybe 19 points. So they're doing really well. Playing 11-man at such a small school. I was going to ask you what the school population is these days at Rio.
I think it's 100, but that's let me see. I think it was like they might have even added. It's like 150 with junior high also, but I think it's right around 100 students.
Which is incredible, right? To be able to compete with these big high schools. And I think it was last season, the playoff win against Charter Oak.
Man.
Like what? Like Charter Oak, I grew up in West Covina and stuff, and Charter Oak's in Covina, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just seeing like a school like that, and just kind of putting Rio on the map. And I was watching, I think it was something that you posted on Facebook. I think Rio is now 8th in the valley, in the San Gabriel Valley, which, back in the day, nothing like that, especially when we're 8-man football, but like,
yeah,
we've been 11-man football for like 20 years.
20 years. This is the 2002 was the first full year. So this is, the 21st season. We were seniors when we took that leap, and that was a tremendous honor. As far as 11-man goes, because you guys were making big noise in the 90s. I know you guys played a couple of 11-man games to kind of feel it out. What do you would you have liked to play 11-man to kind of have a shot at some of these local schools back in the day?
No, I don't want them chasing after me. I don't want that problem. No, but seriously, I always enjoyed those 11-man games. I know that we weren't like prepared in an 11-man way, but we just kind of, we'd have like 1 week of practice to get ready for that game. And I think one year we played against, I think it was Campbell Hall. And another year we played against Malibu.
Yeah.
Malibu High School or Malibu Christian or
no, Malibu.
It was Malibu High School. Okay.
Yeah.
And each of those times we won. So there's always that wonder if like, okay, what if we had, switched over earlier but like the numbers, like, I don't know if we would have had like enough players to kind of field a team. Like we'd have to bring up sophomores, freshmen, junior high students just to field a team. Yeah, I kind of wonder what would have happened, but at the same time,
well, you look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that though. I mean, there's 4 senior boys playing on the football team this year.
There's only 4 this year?
There's 4. I think there's 4, maybe 5 juniors. This team it's a ton of freshmen. I mean, I always find it funny when teams who have 50 players, or teams, they can't field football teams, and Rio does it year in and year out with, 20, 30 guys who can shoot everybody up. Right. So
yeah.
I don't know. I think you guys would have dominated. I mean, the 11-man era would have started earlier. It would have been better for everyone, I think.
But how cool is it that you guys got to start it though, and you guys had your success with it as well? Like that's like a true like testament to not just Rio football, but for your guys' class and being able to adapt quickly and be successful. So big ups to you guys.
We were the pioneers, man. After all your success in the 8-man era, we had 5 championships in 6 years, and it was like, all right, it's time to try something new, and away we went. So Rio Hondo Prep football, man, I'm glad you're checking it out more. That's been my goal, bringing alumni to kind of care about it a little. The access is great. So I appreciate you not just coming on today, but also tuning in and following these guys, because these guys need to know, hey, who was that Jacob Blake guy that you guys always talk about,
Jacob, he has his old guy now.
Hey, dude, you haven't aged one bit. What are you talking about? You look like you're still a senior starting guard for Rio Hondo Prep.
Well, I appreciate that, but I got the filter going on. I got the filter, I'm just kidding. But no, I'm doing okay. Not too bad for 41, but definitely not the same. I don't move the same.
No more dunks, huh?
Hey, I dunked it for my 39th birthday. So not to brag, but I set a goal and it took me 2 years to kind of get the springs back. Wasn't a true dunk. It was off the bounce, and it was just a perfect opportunity.
Hey, we'll count it. We'll score it.
We'll count
it. Hey, Jacob, any specific memories of Rio football? You already kind of summed up what it meant, but just, was there any memories that jump out, or just things that when you think of Rio football that just come to mind? Or, I mean, just kind of in your closing statement here about Rio football, your experience, or kind of just what the program means.
Absolutely. So senior year, just thinking back to it, because that was the year I truly fully felt like, okay, like this is where I belong and stuff. And I know that we had won as juniors, but senior year, it was like, okay, this is ours, So just that season, it being special, the homecoming loss, and, facing strife during the season, getting challenged. And then the championship game, like you mentioned, Riverside Christian, we beat them earlier in the season, and then we faced them in the CIF finals. And I don't know if this is true, but I don't know if there was some kind of a coin flip or something to determine home or away for the championship game. But I remember someone coming back telling us that the Riverside Christian coach said, we'll play them at home so we could beat them on their field before, the championship game. I'm like, oh, okay. So I know that gave us kind of fuel for the fire, and just kind of blowing them out at home for that final football game, doing the alma mater at the end of the games, and, having, all of our friends and families in the stands. I remember my mom yelling in the stands, pep band, the Clark family, and just, Mrs. Dowd and Mr. Dowd with those big dogs over in the end zone. And it was just such an experience. And I'm so thankful for it. Thankful for all my coaches leading up to it. Thankful for all of my teammates, because, earlier on you're going over stats and stuff, but those are really stats of the team. I'm the one carrying the ball, but the offensive line, that's key, right? All the blocking.
Yeah.
Key. So big ups to all my brothers that I played with, and that looked out for me, and continue to look out for me. Like, we still got each other's back. So
that is great stuff. You painted a picture. I think it took everyone to that Rio Hondo game. Not much changes. The venue has. I do know that you'll love this. One of the 4 championships Rio has won in 11-man was against Riverside Christian at Carefield. At Carefield.
Yeah.
So there you go. Take that, Riverside. Beat you in 8-man on our field and beat you in 11-man on our field. So there we go, man. That's great stuff, man. Hearing the story behind it. Well, Jacob, thanks for doing this. I didn't even mention you're the all-time career leader in punt return yards, 576. I don't want to leave anything off here of your accolades, but man, I'm all this paper here. I just too much.
They set up that wall. You fake it one way, they set up the wall, and then it's like bodies are flying, and I'm just cruising down the sideline. So punt returns, yeah, those guys had it down to a science. It was amazing.
Don't kick it to Blake. Not only will he score, but it's for your own personal well-being. You're going to get blindsided by Seth Didius or Jason Ramos or the other guys out there.
Those guys are amazing. It was so much fun.
Man, what a great story. Well, we went a little long, but it was fun. It was worth it. Jacob, thank you for this. This will be out soon. And man, thank you for the memories that I got to have watching you as a junior high kid, and you were larger than life to us. And the best part of Rio is, as a junior high student, you're looking up to these guys. You see these guys in the hallways, and as a senior or junior, whatever it was, you were so kind to us little guys, who thought you guys were larger than life too.
Well, you guys were the best, and it was so much fun interacting with you guys, and it was inspiration. We took that inspiration to the field. So I really appreciate you having me on the show.
Dude, absolutely. It's an honor. Pleasure.
Thank you.
Pleasure's mine, man. Hey, keep that charge, keep going, and continued success up there in Northern California with your work and the family and everything. Thanks so much, Jacob Blake.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Panel Live. Great stuff there from Jacob Blake, one of the best athletes to ever go through Rio Hondo Prep, a 3-time CIF champion, career leader, or at least honorable mention in so many different categories in the record books. I got to tell you, if you guys didn't get a chance to watch Jacob Blake not only run the ball, but play basketball, what a stud, man. I mean, the top of the 1-3-1 defense, leading the fast break, pulling up, hitting jumpers, and you know what? It just hit me. You want to know? You know what? I knew I liked Jacob, and for many reasons, but he wore the number 1 in football. But you know what number he wore in basketball and in baseball, to my knowledge? Big 1-5, baby. 15. That's right, Blake. Way to go, man. And there was no 15 jersey with those jerseys that you guys wore that we ended up wearing for a little bit. So I had to settle for number 12. Sergio Villalobos had to follow in the great quarterback's footsteps. Love me some number 12. But we all can love the number 1, Jacob Blake. When we think of that numero uno, it's the man, the myth, and the legend. And you guys got to hear from him today. I'm so fired up about that you guys got a chance to go back in time, not that long ago, really, to one of the most legendary players of all time. And Jacob made a great point. He's like, he didn't love football, but he loved being out there with his guys and working hard. And he knew other guys really did love football. And that's classic Rio Hondo, man. Guys that don't love something or feel I don't know if there was ever a time Jacob wasn't good at something. It doesn't seem that was the case, but you give your all into everything and you excel. And if Jacob Blake went to another school, he may not play football. He didn't like it or whatever, but he went out there and did it. And I think he did. He loved it. Deep down, he liked it. He liked scoring those touchdowns. And we loved watching him. And again, being the students there at the time, just such a blast. And the cycle continues, man. The young kids looking up to the student athletes at Rio, then you become a junior high kid. You're in the halls with these guys, and before you know it, you're wearing that uniform that you looked up to, and you're singing that alma mater, and people are watching you, and before you know it, it's gone in the blink of an eye. Much like this season is going by at a rapid pace. I feel like we were just in the middle of the summer talking about this podcast and all the big things we had ahead, and now here we are, week 7 in a bye, only 3 games remaining, then hopefully the playoffs and multiple games there. But if you haven't had a chance, man, get out to the game next week. 2 home games left on the 13th against Viewpoint, a Thursday night, and then the 21st against Brentwood at Care Park on a Friday night. So plenty of options left. And if you haven't done so, man, I encourage you, check out the NFHS broadcast. It costs a little money, but you only got to pay for it for 1 more month. And the guys do an outstanding broadcast For those of us that can't make the game, I am able to help them and do little videos here and there. Also a pregame show, a halftime, and a post game, some comments and things. But Clark and Kyle do an outstanding job. Chris Kirby, Robert Bray, Dave Guerrero making that all happen. So check it out. I promise you it's worth it. If you watch one game for $11, I mean, it costs $10 to come to the games in person. Why not sit on your couch or wherever you are and tune in to watch Rio Hondo Prep football with only a few weeks remaining here in the regular season. Enjoy the bye week. Enjoy one more weekend of no football because, man, in a few more weeks, hopefully a few months, it's gone. We won't have it anymore. It'll be more weekends like this where it's like, wait, real football's over. We were just getting started, and we're always just getting started, like Coach Carson often says, not just about the podcast, but the football program as well. Have a wonderful weekend, guys. I am thoroughly happy with how this interview with Jacob Blake turned out, and we're going to get more alumni on very, very soon, especially in the off season and for these middle of the week kind of pregame shows that we do. There's always 2 episodes. Well, I shouldn't say always. When there's no game, there's no recap show on Sundays, but there should be an episode during the week. If there is a game, 24 hours before kickoff, an episode will air. I'll kind of give you some of my thoughts and then hopefully have a guest on affiliated with the program, or like we've had in the past, having someone who's not affiliated with the program, having outside perspective of Rio Hondo Prep football. More of that to come. I can promise you that. No show this Sunday, but next week, Wednesday night at 7:00, 24 hours before kickoff, we'll have another pregame show for you. And we'll have some football to preview with the upcoming opponent. And we're going to have another long form conversation with someone that I've already recorded, and I think you guys will enjoy it. Somebody that is not affiliated with the program, but will definitely give you some thoughts on just the things that Rio does right that maybe other people don't recognize, not just within the program, but around the San Gabriel Valley as well. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I know there was no football this week, but you had a special treat with Jacob Blake, and I thank you for all the support on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, wherever you follow the podcast. The YouTube channel has exploded. Appreciate all the follows. Let's keep this thing growing. If you haven't done so already, share this podcast to somebody. Say, hey, check out a Rio Hondo grad or someone who knows a Rio Hondo grad. Share it, and let's keep it growing, man. Let's make this the biggest podcast, not just in the San Gabriel Valley, but the state and then the country, the biggest high school football podcast, I should say. That is the plan. That is the goal, and it starts now. The future is now. That's it for me, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week on the pregame show before the Viewpoint game on Thursday. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the time off. But as always, guys, it is a kind reminder on this podcast to always be humble in victory and gracious in defeat, because we always have a charge to keep.
A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save, and fit it for the sky. Arm me with jealous care, as in thy sight to live, and O thy servant, Lord, prepare a strict account to